Hi everybody, old guy here, and this is a Nelson Doubleday edition of 3 novels in the child cycle written by Gordon R. Dickson. I don't have the dust cover and not really sure where I picked this up. It has a nice little bookmark and book, you know what they are, book tag located in it. And this one was put out in 1975. Now, Dickson, as you know, is a sci-fi grandmaster. A displaced Canadian who served in the U.S. Army during World War II. His very first story appeared in the very first issue of Fantastic Story. And he co-authored a lot of other stories with Poul Anderson. The Child Cycle, which this is 3 novels of, is an incomplete series focused on the evolution of man through the deeds of various historical Ubermensch, starting with mercenary John Hawkwood of the 14th century and concluding with the Dorsai mercenary Donald Graham, way in the far future. This is also known as the Dorsai series because most of the stories are set in that universe, as is the case with this edition. Now, 3 novels included in this are Necromancer, Tactics of Mistake, and Dorsai, listed in that order. And now, I decided to read them in their publication order, starting with Dorsai, which was published in 1959, The Necromancer, which was 1962, and Tactics, 1971. Good thing. If I had started with the first book in this, Necromancer, I would have made a frisbee out of this because really, if you want to read this entire series, start with Dorsai. Otherwise, you're going to get caught up in Dickson's rather odd metaphysics that defy understanding no matter how much I tried. Now, I could have made a better effort, but it seemed like a lot of work to invest in a series that wasn't really all that compelling. Not that these novels aren't entertaining. They are, but in a nostalgic standard 50s space opera kind of way. You know, where the 50s writer tried to sound more profound than they actually were. It comes across rather quaint now, and Dickson does himself no favors because he is not the clearest writer. His descriptions are less than descriptive and hard to imagine or visualize what he's writing about. But that's okay. It's a good story. It has interesting characters, if it still feels all a bit dated. Dorsai is the maiden novel of the Child series, and it's about Donald Graham, however you choose to pronounce it, a member of the Dorsai, which is the Sparta of the far future, turning out super soldiers that are then hired out to various factions to fight their wars. See, mankind has colonized several planets, and each of them have developed a specialty that creates a trade in humans who contract to perform whatever their specialty is on whatever world that wants to hire them. Dorsai is resource poor, but has really tough people who undergo really tough military training that would drop a Marine to his knees. Donald has just graduated from the academy and he's seeking his first assignment. And he's kind of an unusual character because he has this enhanced intuition. It gives him a greater insight into possible tactics and strategies than his hidebound superiors. And an attitude of such confidence that it borders on hubris. Pretty much torquing off everyone he works for and knows and loves. Especially his sort of girlfriend, Ania of Cultus, who asks Donald to rescue her from a contract with the odious William of Ceta. And what does Donald do? He immediately goes to see William and say, hey, Ania's trying to get out of her contract, so now that I've told you that, why don't you hire me? Romance is not exactly a highlight in these novels. So Donald takes on contract after contract, and each of them holding a position against conventional wisdom, and naturally proven right by the end of the particular conflict. It gets to the point that you wonder why anyone bothers to question him, because he always wins. Always. But in a very entertaining way, so enjoy. Necromancer is a whole different animal, set a few centuries before Dorsai on an Earth that is just getting into the starfaring business. I have no idea why the title, because there's no real necromancy going on, but there is contact with future and past lives, so I guess that applies. Chronologically, this is the first novel of the child cycle, while Dorsai is the last. But tell you, Dorsai is a better setup for Necromancer than this is for Dorsai. So what's this one about? Well, Paul Formain is an engineer in a gigantic mine when an accident tears his right arm from his body, effectively ending his career driving this giant borer. The grafts don't take, and the beleaguered Paul finally ends up joining something called the Chantry Guild, which promises him the ability to regrow his arm. Now, the Guild is a combination of the People's Temple and Om Shenrikyo, and seeks the destruction of the world so a new evolutionary being can emerge. They have a place on Mercury and can somehow transfer back and forth between there and Earth, an ability that really isn't explained. There's not a lot of other things explained this either, and you'll be hard-pressed to see in what manner this book applies to the child series, except for that evolutionary development thing. Tactics of Mistakes centers around Donald's great-whatever grandfather, Cletus Graham, who was an officer in the Western Alliance of Old Earth when he retires. He is writing a 20-volume book on military tactics that nobody wants to read, so he decides he needs to get back out in the field to see if his ideas, called the Tactics of Mistakes, work. Now, it's based on fencing. You try to get your opponent to overcommit to what looks like an obviously winning strike, but is actually a trap. Yeah, Sun Tzu already wrote about this. But Cletus signs on with the Bacala colony on the planet Cultus in their war with Newland. So on his way out there, Cletus meets Colonel Khan, who is in charge of Dorsai troops assigned to Bacala, and he basically is hired to run this war, and of course he is wildly successful with his Tactics of Mistakes, and he sows the seeds for the events that will eventually lead to Donald's time and Dorsai as Sparta. Now, between these three novels are these interludes involving a couple of people called Tam Olin and Hal Maine, and I have no idea who they are. I don't even know where they are. They appear to be involved with something called the Final Encyclopedia, which they use to find the people in history who will contribute to this human evolution. You'll get an interlude, and then of course it will segue into a Paul and Cletus and Donald story. Seems a lot like Foundation to me. But overall, not bad as space opera goes. Confusing though, very confusing. I was never sure what was going on and really just gave up trying to understand the intent and concentrated on the action, which was pretty good. That may be all you need. Old guy here. See you later.